Greetings, class. This is Professor Daniel Schmeling. I wanted to talk today about managing servers remotely and give you some insight to that. First, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remote into a server. So, so now to manage my server, I have to simply remote in, and that would be just to simply use remote desktop. So let's go ahead and do that. So I go to remote desktop, I choose the server that I want to remote into, right? And so this is the conventional way of managing the server. So now I'm in the server, the server core, this is 2012 server. This is a server full installation, right? It's not a server core, right? Because I have a GUI that I could work with, and that server now is opening up. So now in the management portion, I can click on things and server manager. I'm trying to adjust the screen here because it's in the bottom where I can't click on things. So if I want to manage something, server manager should open up, right? And I'll just give that a minute to open up, and then I make the changes on the server that I want to do. So this is a domain controller server. It has the role of domain controller. It also has the role of a DNS server, which resolves the name of a computer to the IP. It is a DHCP server, which issues IP addresses to items that are on our network. It is a certificate server, which means that it just basically issues certificates to computers on the network. So I could go into manage. I could wait till these things populate, so it'll populate down here. So basically, I'm on the server locally, right? I could add a role from the manage tab. It's still updating here, so you just got to give it a minute. I can go into the tools. Once it's done populating, I should see a list of roles that it's actually performing here. So we'll just give that a minute, and as that's loading up, I'm going to talk about managing it remotely. So on my laptop that I'm on now, I can go to Server Manager. I can open that up. This is on my local desktop now, or my laptop, and I can add a server, right? So I can add a server. So here, I'm going to add rows, right? Which is the same server that I'm actually working with, right? So this server's already added. Let's add Lily. So that Lily is another domain controller, so I'm going to add Lily to my local server manager. So now I'm able to see the roles of those servers, right? So I have Rose here, I have Lily here, and I could go into a role. Let's say I want to change the DHCP. I just simply right clicked on Rose on DHCP, and I go to DHCP Manager, and then DHCP comes up. So this is remotely, right? I'm able to access the roles that are on that server remotely and change them as needed, right? Versus the way of on the local server itself. Now these roles have populated. I could click on it, right? It'll populate over here. I can then change the DHCP, right, in the same methodology, right, DHCP manager. But instead of being on the server that I have to make the change, I'm on my desktop or laptop and I'm making that change. So I could add any server that I want that's in my domain that I am able to manage, right? I can make changes here versus remoting into each server. So the definite advantage that you have here is I can add 25 servers if I want, versus remoting in each server, right? This is a centralized place of management. And I can simply do that by just adding servers to Server Manager on my laptop or desktop. I'm going to show you another way to manage some things. There's what's called RSAT, Remote Server Admin Tool. For example, in Active Directory, right, I can open up an Active Directory, and this is called an MMC, which is just basically a management console. So let's go ahead and open that up again. So I want to open the file location, and then I want to run it as an admin user. So I just simply shift click. So I'm just logging in. So this is my Active Directory users and computers. So again, this is a role that is on a server, right? Active Directory. And so Active Directory users and computers allows me to reset a person's password or add a computer to the domain. So I could just simply right click and reset their password if I need to. But in this instance, I do not have to go to the server itself, find Active Directory users and computers, right? Which could be slow to open up, and then I have to wait for that to open up on the local server, right? I'm managing that from a remote location using the MMC snap-in, right? So you can use the server manager on your local computer and add as many computers or servers as you'd like. You could use an MMC snap-in, and that was just one example. There's many. I could use DHCP the same way. There's an MMC snap-in. You do have to have a Windows update installed to use that. It doesn't come built in, and that's usually if you Google RSAT, it usually comes up to what you have to install for your Windows 7 or 10 or whatever operating system you have. It is a Windows update. The other thing I wanted to show you, two more things. There's a new management thing. This was called the Honolulu project. You download a MSI file to your computer. You open this up and you can add your servers. So they're all on a web page. So let's say I want to connect to one in Mexico, right? MX01007. It asks me what credentials I want to use. I want to use my admin credentials. So this will then make a connection to that server, and I'm able to manage items on that server by clicking through. Now this will take a while to load, which is a disadvantage because I'm connecting to a server that's somewhere else regionally, right? So I'm not locally on the server. By remoting in, I am remoted to that server installation. So that does take a minute, a disadvantage, right? But here I could do the same thing. So I could look at certificates, I could look at registry, I could look at different things on that server, storage, what Windows updates are available. And again, it takes a minute to load because it's loading across the WAN network and not locally on that server. So a disadvantage here. Obviously, and see in this case, it's not connecting. So I believe they're doing updates today, and that server shut off, so I can't connect to it. But an advantage is it's a centralized place to manage every server I have in the region. An obvious disadvantage is that it's not as fast as being remoted into that server and locally connected. The final thing I want to go over is PowerShell. That can be used as a management source. And what I've done here is I've remoted into a server. Let's see if that's it. That's it. We're going to go ahead and remote into the server. Again, it's not server core. It's the GUI full installation. That's a little bit easier for me to use. So I'm going to run, that's the PowerShell symbol. I'm going to run that as an administrator. And the first thing I want to do is I want to allow this server to have a connection, right? I want to enable remoting in using the PowerShell. I simply type this command right here, enable PS remoting, hit enter. Takes a minute, and then that does allow remoting. So this is on the server. I've just split the screens here, and this is on my local desktop. So now it's allowing me to use that remote tool. So on my local laptop here, I'm going to use PowerShell to connect to that computer. When you use PowerShell, you always have to right-click and run it as admin. I'm not sure why they didn't just make you run it as admin automatically, but you do have to do that each time. So I'm going to, the name of this server is US01S025. I'm going to go ahead and connect to that server using PowerShell. I'm going to test that connection. So I am connected via PowerShell to this server from my desktop. And now I want to just issue a command to log into that PC remotely here. So it's prompting me for my credentials. I'm using these credentials to connect to that server. And so now I am connected. You can see that it has the server name and how I'm connected to. And now basically I'm just going to use command prompt commands. So C ... backs me out of the directory, change directory. I want to get to C, and I could list the items there. CD Windows puts me back into Windows. So the PowerShell is obviously better for, it's a lower connection needed, so it's not that GUI connection that'll take a minute. This is more instant, but the disadvantage, much like Server Core, is that I have to know and understand what commands I need to type in order to do what I need. So if I want to install a role, I'd have to know what I have to type to install a role on the server. Versus if I was on the server, I could simply, let's get that on the screen there. So if I want to install a role on the server, I simply go to Server Manager, and I click, add a role, right? Which will populate here in just a minute. Add a role, right? So and then it's just click next, where here I have to type in, install Windows, something like install Windows feature or role, or so there is some things that you have to understand in PowerShell. But obviously the advantage is if you do understand it, it's lower resourced, quicker to access and make the change. Okay, folks, that's all. Just in recap, I showed you how to do remote management on servers using PowerShell, using Server Manager remotely, using the MMC remotely, and using the Honolulu project, which is now called Windows Admin Center, managing those servers remotely. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot.